Hello, in this video I will talk about the last volume of the Border trilogy by Cormac McCarthy, Cities of the Plain. Cities of the Plain is the often overlooked third and final installment of the Border trilogy. And while I liked Cities of the Plain very much, and I think it's a very good novel, it falls notably short of the two other novels in the trilogy. All the Pretty Horses is the book that everybody loves, McCarthy fans and more general readers alike. The Crossing is much more polarizing, and it tends to divide the waters. Some people think it's the boring sequel to All the Pretty Horses. A lot of general readers have read All the Pretty Horses and comes to The Crossing thinking that they're going to get something similar, but instead they get a much more esoteric, dense, philosophical and slow novel that is wildly different than what they read in All the Pretty Horses. On the other hand, some people think that it is perhaps even his greatest work and elevates The Crossing above Blood Meridian and above Suttree. And so that is a novel that some people love and some people hate. Now, nobody thinks that Cities of the Plain is the greatest novel in the Border trilogy or in McCarthy's general bibliography. Nobody. It seems to be unanimous that everyone thinks that this is the worst of the three novels. Well, actually, except for one guy. One guy on YouTube has Cities of the Plain as his favorite novel, and I watched this video yesterday, and not to sort of put any negative spotlight or anything like that, but from the video I still don't understand why he thinks that is the best novel in the trilogy. I think that it is notably worse or less good than the two others. It's also sometimes said that you can read these books in either order because they are not really that connected. And I think it's true that you could read All the Pretty Horses and then go straight to Cities of the Plain without reading The Crossing, because actually nothing that happens in The Crossing has any bearing, unfortunately, on Cities of the Plain. And the main protagonist of The Crossing, Billy Parham, while he is a part of Cities of the Plain, he is unfortunately very underdeveloped and very much reduced in Cities of the Plain. So you could read All the Pretty Horses and Cities of the Plain and just not read The Crossing. But you can't read Cities of the Plain without having read All the Pretty Horses, I think. You could also just read The Crossing and not read any of the two other books and just have that as a standalone novel, I think. But all of that being said, let's dive a little bit into Cities of the Plain. So what is this novel all about? So Cities of the Plain is 3 years after All the Pretty Horses. And we find John Glady Cole, JDC, working at another ranch, this time on the American side of the border. And we don't really get told how he came there or sort of what were the circumstances. But in any case, he's there together with a lot of other cowboys, together with Billy Parham. We don't really see anything about how they meet neither, but we sort of guess that they probably met either at this ranch or at another ranch where they worked at some point during the last 3 years. And most of the novel is slice of life cowboy situations. Some cattle ranching, some horse auctioneering, some dog hunting, lots of slow, steady life on the ranch. There's a lot more characters in Cities of the Plain than in the two other books. There are a lot of different ranch hands on this ranch, and they sort of encounter different people, but none of them are really that particular. It's very much John Glady Cole that we follow here. And unfortunately, this includes Billy Parham, and that's one of my main critiques of Cities of the Plain, is that Billy Parham is reduced to just another ranch hand, just a sidekick to John Glady Cole, and even less of a sidekick than Lacey Rawlins is in All the Pretty Horses. And that's also why I say you don't need to read The Crossing, because it doesn't really matter if you know anything about Billy Parham here, because He's very sort of generic, and he fulfills the role of Lazy Rawlins in All the Pretty Horses. He is the voice of reasons. He foreshadows once again everything that goes wrong. He tries to speak reason and to get John Lady Cole to come to his senses, because his plan is outrageous. And of course, John Lady Cole, being who he is not going to listen. Other than slice of life cowboy activities, what we have going on is that these cowboys tend to frequent some brothels in the area. One of them in particular is sort of a high class establishment on the Mexican side of the border. There, John Lady Cole meets a prostitute that he, of course, falls in love with. This prostitute is only 16 years old, and he plans to help her escape from the brothel and bring her to the American side of the border and marry her. And without going too much into it, this reads a little bit different when we know the story of Augusta Britt being 16 years old and Cormac McCarthy faking her identity and her passport in order to bring her into Mexico. Here in Cities of the Plain, we have John Lady Cole trying to fake documents for a 16-year-old prostitute, bringing her into the United States. So it's a little bit, it comes to mind when you know the story that this is a little bit, it reads a little bit differently. I'm not going to go into that whole situation. This whole plan is outrageous. What we know of this prostitute is that she probably also likes or loves John Lady Cole. She's been wildly abused by her parents and by her caretakers. Has been sold into slavery and is now being controlled by Eduardo, who is sort of the head pimp or manager, not the owner, but the manager of this brothel. This is obviously not going to really go very well for John Lady Cole. He doesn't really seem to have any particular plan, or he doesn't really care because he's in love. He wants to marry her, and so he don't care about the consequences. He's just going to carry out his plan, and it doesn't work out. Other than that, and to say something else about the thematics of Cities of the Plain, there's a different atmosphere here. We do focus on some of the older guys at the ranch, some of the people who has been in this game, in this industry, in this life for decades. And through that, we get sort of a peek into, what would life actually look like 30, 40, 50 years from now for people like John Lady Cole and Billy Parham, because they're both 19, 20, 21, 22 maybe years old. John Lady Cole is 19. Billy is, I think, 22, something like that. What is life actually going to look like? This is the life they really like to live. They love it. John Lady Cole in particular idolizes everything that has to do with cowboys and ranch life. But is this really going to be so great? And there's another sort of atmosphere that looms over the whole thing, and that is how all of this is going to change and has already changed. There's lots of there was lots of talk about the army going to take over that whole area. So the cowboy life and the ranching that John Lady Cole wants and knows is going to be no more. And the old timers on the ranch, they're sort of okay with it because they have a limited time left anyway. But this is probably not, the greatest future that characters and people like John Lady Cole and Billy Parham is going to look into. And we see that through some of the old timers' regrets, some of the losses they've had. We have this sort of sentimental and melancholic view. We also get a funny, interesting perspective on how the outside sees cowboys and ranch life. There's a particularly funny conversation that John Lady Cole has when he's visiting a town, and he gets sort of a shine boy, a guy, a young kid in the street to shine his boots for $1, and he speaks with him, and they have sort of a friendly banter back and forth. And at some point, he asked his boy, What about you? What you, because he tells him he's a black sheep, doesn't like to go to school, so he kind of, he prefers to hustle and do little side gigs and stuff like that. And John Clady Cole says, what about you? What would you like to be if you could choose anything? And the boy says, I would like to be a cowboy. And John Clady Cole says, really? And the boy says, no, and looks at him with disgust, which is sort of a very brief passage, but just sort of illustrates how John Clady Cole thinks that his way of life is just the greatest, and everyone must think that is the greatest. But in fact, it's not a life that a lot of people would actually be that interested in living, not even a boy that makes a living off shining people's shoes. Other than that, it has probably escaped no one's attention that John Grady Cole, JC, is also the initials for Jesus Christ. And in this particular case, we have a fallen woman, a prostitute that needs saving. So we do see John Grady Cole as a savior type of character. And with McCarthy, we just know it's not going to work out. Chaos is going to win. Evil is going to persist. And John Grady Cole will not be successful. What else, I think, is there to say? There are some other things in the novel. While All the Pretty Horses is quite fast and eventful and action-packed, we have some more temporal shifts of time in Cities of the Plain that actually reminded me a bit of The Orchard Keeper. We go from, at some point, we spend many pages going to this events of a single hour or a conversation or a ride somewhere, and then very quickly we fast forward 4 or 5 weeks without anything happening in between. So it kind of shifts between being very, very slow-paced and detailed slice of life to just sort of skipping ahead and sort of leaving out a lot of things. And all in all, I think it's not as great a book as the two other novels. It does have one thing in particular that stands out, and which I absolutely loved, and which I think is better than in All the Pretty Horses, and that is the knife fight between John Grady Cole and Eduardo the pimp. Without spoiling anything right here, I'll make a separate video where I will read some of the passages from that knife fight, and there'll be some spoilers as well, so I'll put a warning in that video. But for now here, I'll just say that if there's anything that McCarthy does better than anybody else, it's violence, and it's tense, atmospheric, violent situations. And knife fights are very well suited to this type of style, because knife fights are very personal, they're very gory, and he really just, he takes you into that scene, and you are just hooked, and you are absolutely thoroughly engaged, and you almost feel the slashes yourself when it's described how Eduardo is slicing through John Grady Cole. And I heard someone else say about All the Pretty Horses that the reason why knife fights are so intense is that if both people in a knife fight are good, they both end up in the morgue. If they're both very bad, they both end up in the morgue. And if one of them is very good and the other one is very bad, one goes to the morgue and the other one goes to the hospital. So it never ends well. It's always going to be gory. It's always going to be bloody. And it's just a very personal, intense, near combat situation to take another man's life in. What else is there to say? The epilogue is where we completely shifts over into a style that is much more like The Crossing, where we have Billy Parham many years later encountering a random stranger, and this random stranger embarks on a very philosophical monologue similar to what's going on in The Crossing. But other than that, there's really nothing about The Crossing in this novel whatsoever. Yeah, so I think that's what I have to say about Cities of the Plain. I still liked it very much. It's a 4-star book for me, but that's because I love the way McCarthy writes. Even when he isn't great, I think he's still very good. And it's nice to wrap up the Border Trilogy, and the Border Trilogy as a whole is a monumental piece of work and literature. And even though Cities of the Plain doesn't really live up to the 2 other installments, I still think it's a worthwhile read. If you have read the 2 other books, then you should definitely just read it to wrap it up. It's shorter than any of the 2 others, so it won't take you that long. Okay, that's it for this time. Thank you. Bye.